This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning and welcome to the commemoration of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell Repeal Act of 2020. I am Xochitl Rodriguez Murillo, Deputy Secretary for the Minority and Underrepresented Veterans Division here at the California Department of Veterans Affairs. I will be your MC today, assisting with today's webinar on the Minority and Underrepresented Veterans Division team, Mr. Jose Ayllon, Ricky Cal, and Matthew Laffey. Today's session is being recorded and will be provided on our website within 24 hours following this event. I want to give you all a warm welcome. Thank you for honoring our LGBTQ veterans and community. And our panelists, thank you so much for joining us to tell your story and present information to our veterans and our larger community. Before I begin today's program, viewers, we will go through the program of speakers and presentations and allow times for questions and interactions during the closing session of today's event. We do have a team collecting questions that you are more than welcome to send throughout the program through the chat feature, and you may also come back and ask those questions at the end of today's program. Very good. So as Deputy Secretary to Minority and Underrepresented Veterans, joined the agency back in November of 2019. Very proud to be here. I come with a background of 10 years in the state capitol. I'm an Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran, currently serving in the Army Reserves. So I'm very proud to be here and feel very fortunate to be able to serve our veterans here in California. All right. So Jose, next slide, please. All right, so we covered a bit of the housekeeping and agenda overview portion. If there's any format, and folks, for those of you that are out there, if you can silence your mic if you're driving or if you have any background noise to allow a clear All right, folks, so before we continue, I'll ask that you please minimize any noise in the background or put yourself in mute so that we can hear our panelists clearly. Thank you so much. Next slide, Jose. Fantastic. All right, so we will talk about some calvet updates at the end of this presentation. And first, I'll give an overview of what our division does here as a minority and underrepresented veteran. We ensure that all veterans have equal access to their earned benefits, regardless of race, ethnic origin, religion, gender, sexual identity, or sexual orientation. We do this by promoting programs and advocating the usage of state and federal benefits. And so we also make sure that we identify any gaps in and we put together different outreach programs throughout the year that we are expanding on and take on lead initiatives that educate. Next slide, Jose. Fantastic. So what you're seeing here on the screen is some of our few programs that we are expanding on. We have our calvet Pathway to Citizenship program to assist veterans that are seeking naturalization or citizenship. We also have our Tribal Veterans Outreach Program along with our LGBTQ Inclusion Program. And all of these are programs that seek to connect with our different ethnic groups and veterans from different backgrounds. And so what we're trying to do here at the division is to make sure that we are becoming culturally competent as we move along and bring webinars out to the community. And some of the new initiatives that you're going to see here under this current team, our team has grown from just a couple of us to 4 of us, so that allows us the opportunity to expand and present more information out there. In California, we have about 38% of the nearly 1.6 million veterans living in California identify as an ethnic minority. And so we also have the highest population of LGBTQ veterans when compared to other states. What you'll also be seeing in your future is a celebration for Sikh veterans in our community and in California. And we are also going to be commemorating Native American Day, which takes place tomorrow. And we have a series for that celebration as well. And all of these updates can be found on our website. We also have a roster through which we deliver information and newsletters monthly. So we want to encourage you or any veterans out there that would like to sign up to our roster. We can get you more information on what we do here. Next slide, Jose. Fantastic. So that is our email that you see on the screen, our direct line and main line, and then our website to our minority veterans page. All right, next slide, Jose. And finally, that is my direct contact information. If you ever like to reach out to me directly, I am here for you and welcome all and any of your input. Thank you, Jose. Fantastic. All right. Okay, so to kick off our program, we have our very own Dr. Vito Imbasciani here at Calvet. To introduce you to him, he completed medical school at the University of Vermont College of Medicine, surgical and urologic residencies at Yale New Haven Hospital and West Haven VA Hospital in Connecticut. He earned a master's and PhD degrees from Cornell University and was a Fulbright Scholar to Rome, Italy in 1973. He held academic teaching positions at the University of Florida, Cornell University, and Middleburg College. Dr. Imbasciani was commissioned in the Medical Corps of the United States Army in December 1986 and retired after 27 years in 2014 with the rank of colonel. He has deployed 4 times in support of the wars in the Gulf and received the Meritorious Service Award, the Combat Medic Badge, the Army Commendation Medal 4 times, and the California Order of Merit. Campaign ribbons include Operation Desert Storm, the liberation of Kuwait, and the global war against terrorism, both expeditionary and service. And Dr. Vito Imbasciani, we welcome you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, a true representative of the LGBTQ community. Sir, the floor is yours.
The Zoom meeting is mine, right?
That's correct.
I thank you, Social, and good afternoon. I guess it's good morning, everyone. Sorry. Yes, I'm Vito Imbasciani. I am the Secretary of the California Departments of Veterans Affairs, which means that I am a member of the Governor's Cabinet. I am an out and proud member of the LGBTQ community, and I served 27 years as a surgeon in the Medical Corps of the United States Army, as the state surgeon after 9/11 for 10 years of the California Army National Guard. And for 26 of those years, I served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I'm going to interrupt my prepared remarks to show you right now what people see when they come into my office. And I'm going to ask Rick Zabur, who's the head of the wonderful group of Equality California. Rick, did you ever think you would see this in our lifetimes? That this represents, when people come into my office, just an absolutely wonderful welcome, and it shows where California is in its acceptance of this community. You're going to hear all kinds of wonderful remarks from Rick and from one of the other leaders of the California Army National Guard, Matt Beavers, in a little bit. We have come such a long way through the efforts of so many, many people. I'm here today to help you all celebrate and commemorate the repeal of one of the most insidious pieces of unfairness and cruelty that was enacted into law, and which President Obama ended in 2012. If I swung my camera around, you could see hanging on my wall a signed copy of that repeal by the president that I'm very proud of. It has a central piece of honor on the wall of my office. Let me give you a personal anecdote of what it was like to serve under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I deployed a total of 4 times, going way back to Operation Desert Storm as a young captain. But in the 2004 deployment to Iraq, I was at a place called Logistical Support Area Anaconda. And when I had some free time, I would do what any of the soldiers did. I'd wander over to a tent located in the middle of the compound. It was always full with soldiers and other military personnel at Balad or Anaconda. And the windows of the tent were always heavily shaded. They prevented the enemy from using any light as a target for their mortars. The tents were also dark on the inside to make it easier for all of us to see the screens, because we were trying to contact our families back home. And inside, it would be very quiet, and you'd hear the general buzz of conversation as the soldier, for example, in the next cubicle would be cooing and over the newborn baby, the birth of which he probably was not there to see, or listening to some child on another computer say, "Hey, when are you coming home, Daddy? We miss you." Or another woman soldier would be talking to her husband. And all of these service members were able very openly to tell their family and loved ones back home those words, "I love you." I couldn't do that back then. Even though I dedicated my life to serving my country and as a combat surgeon served in some pretty dangerous situations, the existing law made it impossible for me to share that same kind of joy with my loved ones and the ones that they shared with their families. I couldn't be seen off when I was deploying. My family wasn't there waving American flags with all the other families when I deployed, and they weren't there on the airfield when the plane touched down and brought us home from Iraq or Germany or wherever I deployed. If I had come out in uniform, my military service doubtless would have ended abruptly. My dedication to this nation would not have mattered. And that would be pretty ironic because honesty is still one of the Army's core virtues. In essence, those of us in the LGBT community who served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, we defended everyone's freedoms except our own, not so much. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in existence since 1993, and during that years-long dismal existence, it left no room in the military for LGBTQ individuals to serve. When it became law under President Clinton in 93, we could continue to serve as long as we didn't admit or reveal ourselves. And admit is a very weak and apologetic word. The better description is that we couldn't embrace or celebrate who we were, even as our LGBT civilian friends were running for public office, running corporations, playing professional sports, and enjoying their lives openly and without any fear of retribution. So, as you would expect, I was honored and proud when given the opportunity to introduce President Obama at an LGBTQ fundraiser in Beverly Hills during his re-election campaign, shortly after he signed the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell law, thereby assigning it to the dustbin of history. So I'm very, very proud to share now the seat at the open table with other people, such as Zoe Dunning, who's going to speak to you shortly, a member of our California Veterans Board. She served openly in the Navy when it was illegal to do so, defying the law at great risk to her career and her future. She stood next to President Obama when he signed away Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So why is this important now, more than 10 years after such a discriminating policy finally ended? You may be surprised to learn that there is still no federal law prohibiting discrimination against LGBTQ persons. There are those who drive, who intend to drive patriotic transgendered Americans out of service by forcing them to adhere to the gender of their birth, when in fact gender should no longer be relevant. That is an affront and a slap at all who fought and continue to fight for equality, from the Stonewall riots and the gay rights movement of the 1960s to the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's an affront and an insult to those in the LGBT community who have served so bravely and in so many cases died to defend this nation and our Constitution. Moments like these compel and encourage us to remember that throughout American history, we have gained our civil rights through our civil fights. Fights fought on battlefields, but also in the streets of northern cities, on southern bridges, in diners, on buses, and in marches in Washington, and finally in courtrooms across the country. Peaceful protests and the struggle for civil rights continue in our streets today, Victories in this sphere never come quickly or easily. These struggles can take years, decades, even centuries to change minds and to change laws. But they must be fought. And when they are won, the victories must be defended. So we can never take for granted these liberties, and we have to fight for them and never forget them. And that's what brings us here together today. Don't ask, don't tell. How about this instead? Don't ever forget, and don't ever take a step backwards. So let's keep moving forward. So I celebrate this victory with you today, the anniversary of this victory. I look forward to continuing the struggle in the future to expand these rights to other individuals. And I am just honored to have served the nation and to be in the company of so many other serving veterans. And I thank you all for your presence here today. Thank you, Social.
Thank you, sir. Well said. That is right. We stand by what is right and look to the future to ensure that those that served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell are served justice, that our transgender veterans are granted the rights and benefits they deserve, and that we continue to work through vital partnerships to ensure that those who sign on the dotted line to take a bullet for our country are fairly represented under any policy or platform geared towards assisting veterans. Thank you, sir. With that, we are going to welcome Assemblymember Jacqui Irwin. Assemblymember Jacqui Irwin represents the 44th District of the California State Assembly. She was first elected in 2014, representing the cities of Camarillo, Moore Park, Oxnard, Port Hueneme, Thousand Oaks, and Westlake Village. As a former mayor of Thousand Oaks, Irwin understands the importance of working across party lines at the national, state, and local level to help make her community one of the safest places to live and raise a family. In her first term in the Assembly, Irwin successfully authored numerous pieces of legislation into law and brought vital state funds back to her community. Through her leadership, funding was allocated for the creation of the CSU Channel Islands School of Engineering and for innovation centers on UC campuses to transform UC research into products. Her legislation created tax-free savings accounts for the disabled, increased cybersecurity of state agencies, and removed barriers to military service members seeking mental health services. Irwin continued her focus on ensuring safety for California families with laws that protect children from unsafe products, assist law enforcement investigating online crime, and empower parents to safeguard their child's identity. Irwin also championed the environment with laws that expanded the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, promoted renewable energy resources, while also leading efforts to utilize the local brine line to bring purified water to local farmers. Assemblymember Irwin also currently sits on the Veterans Affairs Committee and is also a member of other various committees in our state legislature. Ms. Irwin, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. And Dr. Imbasciani, always nice to see you, even if it's only virtually. You know you are an inspiration to so many, and you know how much I appreciate working with you. I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to take part today, and most of all, I want to thank Calvet and Deputy Secretary Xochitl Rodriguez Murillo for forging ahead and insisting upon having an occasion today, despite the circumstances that have been stacked against us. I'm sure we've all grown used to educating kids at home, holding routine meetings from home, and doing all sorts of stuff from home that we're used to doing in person. Public ceremonies are another thing entirely. They take so much of their gravity from people being together in the same place, but it is very important for us to participate in community observances upon occasions like this. It's vital to building and maintaining social cohesion, to reinforcing who we are and what we value. The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the long, difficult fight that preceded it have lessons for today, a time when it seems though fights we thought we had won, matters we thought we had settled are reversed and relitigated. For example, we can't forget that even as we celebrate the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the persecution and uncertainty to which transgender service members have been subjected in the last few years. In the midst of all this, the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell seems to stand untouched. It is worth reminding ourselves that it took almost 2 decades to repeal it. and that when it was implemented in 1993, it was in itself an improvement on centuries of exclusionary prejudice that prevented gay and lesbian Americans from serving in the military and forced those who did to live in secrecy under the constant threat of discovery and retribution. Injustice isn't easily defeated, but when it is, it can happen so suddenly and divisively. That's what it feels like it was. And victory doesn't erase the past. There are still lives and careers and records to restore. About 13,000 service members were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but for a variety of reasons, only about 1,000 or so have sought to discharge upgrades that they are eligible for. There's so many explanations for this. Some are definitely proud, defiantly proud about their discharges, proud that they tried to serve a country that wouldn't have them. What is more honorable than that? Others may be reluctant to subject themselves to a daunting process administered by the same service that rejected them. Others may simply lack the time and resources to attempt it. This is where state legislators can step in. Earlier this year, my colleague, Mr. Gloria, came to me with an idea to restore benefits to those who had been discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell under other than honorable conditions. Working with his office in collaboration with Calvet, we had the bones of a workable proposal for the state to provide direct funding support with discharge upgrades. The coronavirus pandemic took that and many other worthy ideas off the table, but I would like to return to this in the next legislative session, and I hope that the administration and Calvet will be able to lend their support. This is how we make progress, coming back year after year to do what remains undone, until we finally create an environment where we not only let people be who they are, but make them whole and let them serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblymember Irwin. That is correct. We have so much going on with COVID and the fires, and of course, an upcoming election in which we all need to take part in. And we won't get distracted, right? We will continue on with the mission. I appreciate you joining us. Very good, folks. I would now like to welcome Ms. Zoe Dunning, member of our California Veterans Board. She is a retired commander in the United States Navy Supply Corps. She served on active duty from 1985 to 91 and in the reserves from 91 to 2007. Commander Dunning was one of the leaders in the efforts to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In 1993, she came out publicly as a lesbian and subsequently won her Don't Ask, Don't Tell administrative discharge hearing, and served as an open lesbian for 13 years in the Navy Reserves prior to the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. She stood next to President Obama as he signed the repeal legislation in 2010. She also serves on the United States World War I Centennial Commission and as an advisory board member to the nonprofit Vets in Tech and as a board president for the nonprofit Wall of Vets. She holds an MBA from Stanford University and is a 1985 graduate of the United States Naval Academy. Zoe, it's a pleasure to have you join us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this amazing commemoration. I'm so excited that we're taking the time and the effort to acknowledge this very important milestone in our country's history. And I also want to encourage those of you who've tuned in. I want to thank you for your time to be here with us today in this celebration. And I'm starting to see in the chat folks sharing their service, what years they served. I encourage you to let us know who you are. So if you have that capability, please let us know who you are and where you served and when, and particularly if you had to serve under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and hide who you were. I think this is for you. This moment is for you. All of us, like Dr. Imbasciani and myself and others who had to hide who we were when we were in the military, wanting to serve our country and being forced to hide. As mentioned in my introduction, I'm a 1985 graduate of the Naval Academy, and when I signed up, I was, subject to the honor code. A midshipman does not lie, cheat, or steal, and those are the values of the military that I believed in strongly. And yet, when I figured out that I was lesbian, I had to act incongruently with that honor code. I had to hide who I was. I had to, in a sense, deceive my fellow shipmates and others about exactly who I was in order to continue to serve. And that's contrary to the values of the organization. It's contrary to the integrity of the military. And so in 1993, when I was a lieutenant in the reserves, I did come out publicly This was right before Clinton took office. It was under the policy prior to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I actually went through 2 discharge hearings, one under the policy prior to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then Don't Ask, Don't Tell was announced, and I went under one under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Interestingly, the military, between those 2 discharge hearings, selected me for promotion to lieutenant commander. So in some ways, the military doesn't know what the left hand and the right hand is doing. On one hand, they're trying to kick me out. On the other hand, they were promoting me. But for whatever reason, I actually won my 2nd discharge hearing. That's probably one of the first dozen Don't Ask, Don't Tell cases to be tried. There was very little precedent on what it took to prosecute or defend one of those cases. But I did win my fight, and that enabled me to continue to serve as an open lesbian in the military for 13 years. And the argument against gays serving in the military at the time was that we would ruin unit cohesion and morale. And so my whole reason for being during those 13 years was to disprove that assumption, to be able to serve proudly in my units, have my units perform top notch. And that is exactly what happened. And again, subsequently promoted to commander. So I won the case for myself, but as we mentioned, over 13,000 people did lose their careers under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I worked in an organization called Servicemembers Legal Defense Network, and we provided free legal services to those who are impacted by the policy, as well as fought to actually overturn it. And so we created a broad-based coalition, and as was mentioned earlier, these movements do not go quickly. I worked for 18 years on the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It takes legislative, legal, grassroots, policymaking, media, academic research. It takes all of those things to be put into place to help change our nation for the better. And I was honored to be selected to stand up on stage with President Obama at the signing ceremony. It was one of the greatest honors of my life to be able to look out into the audience and see all the people whose lives have been forever altered by this policy. And it brings me incredible joy to go and meet people who are serving today in the military who never knew what it was like to serve in a military that prohibited you from serving if you're LGBT. You know, they can serve openly, they can serve proudly, and it's an amazing accomplishment that we've had. But we can't leave our transgender brothers and sisters behind, and so we have to continue that fight to make sure that our military is open to everyone, and that it's not just about sexual orientation; it's also about you know, transgender rights and making sure that we allow everyone to serve. So I want to thank you for allowing me to participate in today's ceremony. It is just an incredible honor. I was fortunately nominated to the Veterans Board to serve with Dr. Imbasciani and everyone else here in terms of helping represent the veterans of California and making sure that the state of California meets your needs, meets your, that you are aware of what benefits you're eligible for, and represents and is the voice for veterans in the state of California. So it's an honor to serve on the board. It's an honor to be a participant in today's events. And I thank you very much for taking your time today to tune in and commemorate this historic event.
Ms. Dunning, thank you so much for your service to our military and your dedication to our board and all you do for LGBTQ veterans and beyond. All right, folks, so up next, we have Mr. Rick Chavez-Zber, Executive Director of Equality California. And as many of you may know, Equality California advances and empowers the LGBTQ community by pushing for social justice for that community. Mr. Rick Chavez-Zber is a distinguished lawyer with a long history of advocacy for LGBTQ and environmental causes. Zber has served as the Executive Director of Equality California since 2014, when he retired from Latham & Watkins, one of the world's largest and most respected law firms, where he was a senior partner and practiced law for 29 years. At Equality California, he's led the organization through a period of significant growth and expansion of its mission to include advancing civil rights and social justice for the diverse communities to which LGBTQ people belong. Communities of color, communities of faith, immigrants, women, and people living with HIV. A lifelong LGBTQ trailblazer, Zber was Latham & Watkins' first openly gay attorney and first openly gay partner. He worked in all aspects of the firm's environmental law and resource practice, including leading the firm's extensive work before the California Coastal Commission. He was cited one of Southern California's top 10 environmental attorneys by the Los Angeles Business Journal in its 2009 Who's Who in Law feature. He was also cited as the leading environmental attorney by the Los Angeles Business Journal in 2008 and 2009. A proud co-parent to 3 children with their lesbian co-parents, Zbir grew up in a farming community in the Rio Grande Valley, south of Albuquerque, New Mexico, where his mother, Erlinda Chavez Zbir, and her family here lived for generations. Zbir is a graduate of Yale University and Harvard Law School. Thank you, Rick, for joining us today.
That was me, I'm sorry. I had read my mute on. So thank you very much, Secretary. I'm honored to be here today, especially proud to join Dr. Imbasciani and Zoe Dunning, who are 2 of my personal heroes. And also really proud to be part of this celebration of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. For 17 years, that law prohibited qualified gay, lesbian, and bisexual Americans from serving in our armed forces and sent a message that discrimination was acceptable. In 1994, the United States adopted Don't Ask, Don't Tell as official federal policy on military service by lesbian, gay, and bisexual individuals. The rule was discrimination in its purest form. And as you heard from the stories that Dr. Imbasciani shared and Zoe Dunning, who really was at the lead of repealing this horrible policy, it prevented service members from being openly LGBT without the threat of being discharged. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was based on the false assumption that the presence of LGBTQ individuals in any branch of the military would undermine the ability of people to carry out their duties, which is Zoe Dunning and Dr. Imbasciani have shown, and so many, countless others, many of you who are on this call today have demonstrated. Over the course of the policy's life, thousands of brave service members were discharged simply for who they were or who they loved. When President, the other thing about the law is, in addition to just the horrible messages sent, by the time it was repealed, over 13,000 American service members were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And of course, Don't Ask, Don't Tell really hurt women and minorities the most. In 2008, 45% of troops discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell were members of communities of color, whereas only about 30% of members of the service were members of communities of color. Women accounted for 34% of the discharges, but were only 14% of the military. So you see how not only harmful this was to LGBTQ people, but harmful to people of color and women as well. When President Barack Obama campaigned for president in 2008 with the promise to immediately overturn Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the discharges continued in his first year at the White House. And by 2010, several United States, including Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, and New Hampshire, had legalized same-sex marriage. Later that year, the Pentagon announced the results of a report aimed at determining how a repeal would affect the military. And at that point, some 70% of U.S. service members surveyed said that a repeal would have mixed, positive, or no impact. Finally, the House and the Senate repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which President Obama signed into law, which is what we're celebrating today. The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell also seemed to have a domino effect on other long-standing barriers within the armed forces. In 2013, the Pentagon announced it would lift the ban on women serving in ground combat units. In 2015, the Pentagon added sexual orientation to the military equal opportunity policy for the first time, meaning that gay service members and service women would be protected from discrimination. Unfortunately, in 2016, the military finally ended its ban on transgender service members serving in the military. But of course, that change in policy was short-lived. And before it was implemented, on July 16th, President Trump tweeted that the U.S. military would no longer accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity. He said, "Our military must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical costs and disruption that transgender and the people in the military would entail. At that time, studies estimated that between about 2,500 and 15,000 transgender people were serving in the United States military, and a 2015 survey of over 27,000 transgender individuals from the National Center for Transgender Equality found that transgender respondents reported twice the rate of military service compared to the general population. One of the things that, and I want to talk a little bit about Stockman v. Trump, which is one of a number of lawsuits that were brought. This is the one that Equality California brought with the National Center for Lesbian Rights and GLAAD, as well as 7 really brave transgender individuals. One of my proudest moments as executive director of Equality California was really listening to and interviewing the potential plaintiffs when we were actually bringing this lawsuit. It was amazing to me, the stories that these people had, really their desire to serve their country, how incredibly qualified and talented and passionate they were about their service. It was really sort of heartbreaking to hear these stories and really what the impact that this horrible ban is having on people who wanted to do nothing other than serve their country and do so with honor and distinction. The other thing about the ban is, I realized in addition to limiting the careers and the ability to serve our country, it has huge impacts on the lives of people in terms of the way that the military has served as a pathway out of disadvantage and into the middle class for so many people. And my family, my father's service in the military, who served in the Korean War, was a clear example of that. My dad grew up in Chicago, his mother and his father had immigrated from what is now the Czech Republic. They were very poor. They were a family of primarily steel workers, and my dad dropped out of high school when he was 16 years old to go to work in the steel mills because he had to support his family. When the Korean War came about, my dad, wanting to serve our country, enlisted in the military, and it was because of that military service that he ultimately utilized the GI Bill because he couldn't have afforded to go to college on his own. And that was, his pathway out of economic insecurity and really improved the lives of my entire family. And that is, an example of what this transgender military ban affects. It is harming transgender people in so many ways, including, providing sort of a secure future for them and a career that they want to serve in. The current policy that Trump was embodied in a memo in August of 2017 allows currently serving trans members to remain, but ordered the cessation of the Department of Defense or Homeland Security of resources to fund sexual reassignment surgical procedures for military personnel, except to the extent to protect the health of an individual who has already begun a course of treatment to reassign his or her sex. The Trump proposal went against the military's own recommendations regarding transgender service members, which were arrived at as part of a policy review that began in 2015 by Secretary of Defense at that time, Ashton Carter. Under Secretary Carter, a Pentagon Commission study concluded that there were no reasons to exclude transgender individuals from military service. President Obama's administration then lifted the ban on transgender people serving in the military in June 2016, permitting those already in the armed forces to be open about their gender identities and setting a date to allow the recruitment of openly transgender individuals. Trump's policy goes against public opinion as well. In 2017, more than 50% of Americans supported allowing transgender men and women to serve in the military, and a June 2019 poll shows this number has risen to 71%. 56 former military generals and admirals, along with 15 attorney generals, also opposed the ban in 2017. Democrats came out against the ban, as did some prominent Republicans, including then Senator John McCain, of course, a decorated veteran from the Vietnam and a former prisoner of war, who said in 2017 that any service member who meets appropriate military standards should be permitted to serve. Quote, when less than 1% of Americans are volunteering to join the military, we should welcome all of those who are willing and able to serve our country, McCain said at the time. In addition to our lawsuit, 4 other lawsuits are still working their way through the courts. Lawmakers have introduced legislation in Washington and attempted to amend the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act to rescind the ban. I'll sort of turn now to the slides. Our lawsuit, Stockman v. Trump, again, is one that, you can go to the next slide, please, is one that was brought by 7 transgender service members and recruits. We filed it in September 2017. You go to the next slide. Again, we're represented by the National Center for Lesbian Rights, the LGBTQ legal advocates and defenders, and my former law firm, Latham & Watkins LLP, is representing Equality California, and the individual plaintiffs is Stockman v. Trump. Equality California represents more than 500,000 members in California, including transgender people directly affected by the president's directive, and the 7 individual plaintiffs across the country who are being harmed by this ban. Next slide. The suit argues that the transgender military ban unlawfully discriminates against transgender people on the basis of their gender identity, that it violates transgender people's fundamental rights by penalizing and stigmatizing them for expressing a fundamental aspect of their personal identity, that it violates transgender service members' right to openly express who they are, and the ban would tear apart the lives and livelihoods, cost taxpayers of thousands of service members, cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars, and deprive the military of loyal, talented service members. And we believe that in the long run, it will not stand. Of course, we can go to the next slide, please. The current status is that the nationwide preliminary injunctions in Stockman and 3 other lawsuits successfully delayed enforcement of the ban through January 2019, when the United States Supreme Court unfortunately granted the Department of Justice's application for a stay on the injunctions. The Trump administration began enforcing the ban again in April of 2019, and the current policy mandates the discharge, there's a typo there, of any service member who comes out as transgender and seeks to undergo a gender transition, and no transgender person may enlist in the military at this time. On March 17, 2020, GLAAD and NCLR filed a new lawsuit, Doe versus Esper, the first case to challenge implementation of the ban against active military service members since the ban went into effect. Overturning this ban is one of our highest priorities. I will say that with the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the passing just in the last few days, and the other changes in the court, it really brings to light the fact that we really have to win this next election. Fortunately, Vice President Joe Biden said in a recent writing about this that duty, honor, and country, that those are the values that drive our service members. And if he has the privilege of serving as the next commander-in-chief, he'll ensure that our American heroes know and that he will have their back and honor their sacrifice always, no matter who they are or who they love. So I think we are very focused on this next election. There's so much at stake. Really everything that we care about at Equality California, the rights of LGBTQ people, the rights of women, the rights of communities of color, the rights of immigrants, our healthcare, reproductive choice, all of these things are on the line. And so it's so important that we get out and that we do everything we can to make sure that that the administration in Washington, D.C. changes, and that we take back the Senate, because those are going to be really the pathway the best pathway to repeal this ban and really protect all of the things that we at Equality California, our members, and so many people on program today care about. So Secretary Dr. Imbasciani, Zoe, thank you for including me. It's an honor to be here with you. It is an honor to be on this panel and before so many people who have served their country with honor and distinction and really true patriotism. Just know that it is one of our top priorities to really fight for the right of everyone to serve our country. So thank you very much for allowing me to join you today.
Thank you, Mrs. Burr. That is correct. We need to continue to fight to retain. I know that, numbers for our military and bringing in more folks to serve our military has been important. And we have General Matthew Beavers, who's going to give us a little bit of insight through the National Guard on that environment. But you're right. Thank you for continuing to fight for our veterans. And we only hope that folks will join us and continue this fight this upcoming November. I'm going to turn now to Ms. Jennifer Dane, who's the Executive Director of Modern Military Association of America, who also services LGBTQ and our veteran community through education and services. And it's one of the largest nonprofits in the nation. Jennifer is a veteran of the United States Air Force who served as an intelligence analyst focusing on geopolitical, terrorism, and threat vulnerability issues. Jennifer currently serves as the Executive Director of the Modern Military Association of America, the largest nonprofit organization working to advocate fairness and equality for the LGBTQ military and veteran community. Jennifer has earned a Diversity and Inclusion Certificate from Cornell University, an Associate Degree in Intelligence Studies from the Community College of the Air Force, a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from Bethel University, and a Master of Arts in Criminal Justice from Arizona State University. She is currently implementing her PhD in education policy with an emphasis on history at The Ohio State University. Jennifer is a past fellow of the Mission Continuous Service Leadership Corps and Veterans in Global Leadership. Jennifer continues to strive to change the world through learning, engaging with others, and honoring her commitment to leaving the world a better place than it was before she was born. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And it's just really an honor to be here. The Modern Military Association of America was born out of something that Zoe said for the Service Member Legal Defense Network. So it's just an honor to be here to see the work that she did continue on. So like my bio said, I'm an Air Force veteran. I did serve also under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And my story is kind of unique. So I started my service in 2010. And my first year, I was, like many others, I was sexually assaulted in the military. And I reported the incident. And during the criminal investigation into him, I was actually investigated for being gay and was outed by folks. So I had to hire an attorney from a different Air Force base to represent me during this time because I was in the process of being discharged for being found out that I was gay. So the unintended consequences of a policy that was implemented really resonate with me and make me want to strive for policies that are really important and really make sure that all policy implementations are done with a well-rounded view of what they would do. So that's where I came to and how my service brought me to the place I am at today. So next slide. Well, you can go to the next slide, one more. Just so you know, our mission, like she mentioned, it's the nation's largest LGBTQ military and veteran nonprofit. Our mission is to advocate, educate, and support the LGBT military community. And what that looks like is advocating for you all, those folks that served in so many spaces. Right now, we currently have several court cases in litigation against the Trump administration and the Secretary of Defense. One specifically is for the trans ban, where we're spearheading that effort for Kanowski versus Trump. And also we have one that's focused on HIV positive folks and making sure that because we know that they are capable and qualified, their ability to serve is so important. In some of our history, we formed from a conglomeration of so many amazing organizations, including the Service Legal Defense Network, the American Military Partner Association, OutServe, that also took on SLDN, just to have a powerhouse of an impact, especially as we look at today what we're going through in the administration. We have about 85,000 members and supporters across the nation, and we have over 200 volunteers. And we're just really excited to be invited to this California space because we know that California is such value in our veteran population, and service members are critically important. And we're really proud of the effort that California is doing to make sure that they show dignity and honor to those who were discharged dishonorably under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and previous policies. Next slide.
That rule and
Next slide.
any materials basically that help.
Next slide. Sorry. I'm just going to really touch on, we've got so many more programs that I'm going to touch on, but today I'm just going to touch on this one. It's called Restore Honor, Restore Dignity. California is doing an amazing job and statewide of actually getting to do this. But what our core mission is that we have been focusing on recently is that we know that folks were discharged dishonorably because of just being LGBTQ. We know that over 114,000 of those LGBT service members were discharged because of policies that were discriminatory since World War II. That includes those during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So what we do is we provide pro bono legal support. So if they're not in California and they're seeking this out, or in California, we partner with those folks too. We make sure that the discharges are upgraded and make sure that they can get the benefits that they deserve. Because of these discharges, we know that these folks don't have access to the VA, they don't have access to educational benefits, and they may not have access to simply banking, like at a bank like USAA, or opportunities that were halted because of their discharge. So we make sure that we provide whatever we can, and depending on the administration, we'd love to push this as a huge policy implementation and to all states, and not just for those that deem these folks to be honored, but expand it beyond California into other states that really need to do this. It should be just a swipe of the pen of upgrading these discharges. Nobody should have to fight over these discriminatory policies that were implemented. So our organization does do many other educational programs. We have 80 chapters nationwide, including 3 in California, and you can connect with us on Facebook. We have an annual gala that we host, making sure that that our service is honored and respected. And we did have really amazing California representatives that came to our gala last year. Mark Takano and also Katie Hill, whenever she was in office, came and spoke, and we're just really proud of the efforts that California is making, and really honored to be here. And if anybody wants to get in contact with us, we are a national organization, but we definitely support and want to see that not only are our veterans served, but also our active duty service members, and specifically their families. We want to reach into the families. Maybe the family is a straight couple, but they have children that identify as LGBTQ and they need support. We saw that one of the biggest implementations of the trans ban that happened was that trans children of military members were left without access to healthcare and left without rights. So we wanted to make sure that they actually were able to even receive just general care. So what we do is we go beyond what we just our lawsuits that we have for service members, but we reach into the families and make sure that they are loved and cared for and supported in whatever ways we can. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with us, you can email me, Jennifer@modernmilitary.org, or follow us. And we look forward to working and continuing this effort. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was discriminatory, and we just hope that this effort continues and we make sure that we restore honor and dignity to all the folks that deserve it, and make sure that trans folks are able to serve too, because they are qualified and capable. And thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dane. Folks, if you want to get in touch with any of our service providers and you don't catch the information as we're moving along, you're more than welcome to reach out to our division. We are very grateful as a state to have allies nationwide, and feel just grateful to have you, Jennifer, out there. And I know, and Dr. Imbasciani and other deputies here in the agency know very well that as California, we lead when we go out to and join Dr. Imbasciani at the National Association of Secretaries of Departments of Veterans Affairs. So thank you so much again. And with that, I actually want to take this moment to give a shout out to Mr. John Spangler, Deputy of Government and Legislative Affairs here at Calvet. Also currently a major in the Army and former Marine Corps veteran. And then we also have Ms. Lindsay Sin, Deputy Secretary to Women Veterans in our Communications Division here at Calvet. Thank you for joining us. Fantastic. So as we've seen with these presentations, we haven't opened up yet for Q&A. We're going to do a little bit of a twist here and welcoming Swords to Plowshares. Swords to Plowshares, we have Ms. Maureen Mo-Cedar joining us today. And so during the course of this presentation, if you have questions, please do send them over through chat. Maureen, what we'll do is I'll have my team track questions that come during your segment, because I know you have to hop off after your presentation. And so any folks whose questions don't get addressed during Maureen's segment, we'll go ahead and come back to it at the end, and also connect you with Swords following this event. All right, Ms. Mo-Cedar is directs Swords to Plowshares Legal Services Unit, which provide assistance and legal representation to homeless and low-income veterans on their veterans' benefits and military discharge upgrade cases. She originally joined Swords' legal team in 2014. Prior to serving as legal director, Mo worked at the Center for Veterans Advancement at Public Counsel and the Homeless Veterans Project of Inner City Law Center. She began her legal career as a staff attorney at DNA People's Legal Services, providing legal assistance to victims of domestic violence on the Navajo Nation. She is a graduate of Boston College Law School and Barnard College of Columbia University, and is a member of the state bars of California and Colorado. All right, Mo, and I didn't ask if there you are. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good morning. Welcome.
Hi, good morning, Sochi. Thanks so much. So yeah, I'll just jump right in. I'll start by giving you a brief overview of the work that we're doing at Swords, and then I'm going to focus, because you've gotten a lot of information already about this veteran population. I think I might just skip over some of that and get into the nitty-gritty of the work that we do at Swords for this population, which primarily focuses on helping folks correct their DD-214s, their military records, so that there's not an indication that they've left the service due to a discriminatory policy like don't ask, don't tell, or previous policies. So next slide, please. So Swords to Plowshares, just to give you some background for those who aren't familiar with the organization, we're based in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have an office in San Francisco and in Oakland, and we have a number of housing sites around the Bay Area that provide permanent and supportive housing to veterans. Over 400 every night are housed in one of our different housing facilities. We also have an Institute for Veteran Policy that does more national level policy advocacy on veterans issues, with a focus on vets who are transitioning out of the military and issues related to homelessness in the veteran population. We have a team of case managers and clinical social workers on staff who work with our clients. We also have a team that does employment and training and gets folks job ready and job placements. And then in the legal services unit, if you can move to the next slide, I am the director of the legal unit, where we right now have 6 attorneys, 2 fellows, and 2 support staff. So we're one of the smaller units within Swords as an organization, but we do a lot of great work. We represent veterans before the Department of Defense and the Department of the VA. Our work before the DoD is doing military discharge upgrades for folks who were kicked out of the military with a less than honorable discharge, and military records correction. Within that work, We do the work that I'm going to talk to you all about today, which is helping folks kicked out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and previously discriminatory policies get their DD-214s corrected. And we also assist trans-identified veterans whose legal name today is different than the one that they served under, so that they can get it corrected to the name that they have today, so they have consistent identity documentation. And then our work before the Department of VA is getting folks who have a less than honorable discharge eligible for VA benefits through the VA's character of discharge process, which I'll touch on in a minute. And then also helping advocate for folks in the service-connected compensation claims process and some other issues related to that, like overpayments, and sometimes pension applications require advocacy as well. All right, so that's some brief info about our work at Swords and in the legal unit. So next slide, please. All right, next one. All right, I think we kind of went over some of this already in the previous one, so I'll just skip over this. I'll talk real briefly just to give some context, and I'm sorry if this has already been touched on, but essentially just wanting to make sure it's clear that, you know, even before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right, it was obviously not a friendly environment, the military, for folks who are LGBT. There were a lot of anti-sodomy regulations in place that were actively enforced. McCarthy era like investigations were common. Folks were investigated, and you know, we've heard terrible stories from clients of the abuse correlated with those investigations that they've experienced, and homosexuality itself was still criminalized within the service, and you could, you know, receive prison time for it. So that's even before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Next slide. And then even after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was implemented, of course, that the discrimination and the harassment didn't end there, nor did the, you know, disparate rates of assault and sexual assault for LGBTQ identified veterans. Next slide. As a result of the mistreatment in service, you have significantly higher rates of mental health issues, substance use, PTSD, homelessness, poverty, and suicide in this veteran population. Understandable given the terrible treatment many of them experienced while they were in the service. And also just for those who stayed closeted in the service, the mental health ramifications of having to do that for many, many years to keep your career, of course, have negative impacts as well. Next slide. All right, and then as was spoken about earlier, you know, even today, this is, you know, we don't have Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but we continue to have discriminatory policies against trans service members. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk briefly about the process by which a veteran who was kicked out under one of these policies can get their military record corrected, so that there's no longer an indication. And I'll say this, I have certainly had clients who were kicked out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell who do not want their record corrected, that they, you know, have it as a source of pride that it says that on there. But that is not, you know, the majority of clients. And many are very motivated to, you know, make sure that their DD-214 does not give any indication that this is why they were kicked out of the service, and make sure it was a fully honorable discharge that they were given. All right, next slide. All right, so as many of you are aware, this is what a DD-214 looks like. There are 6 different discharge statuses that you can leave the service with. For the most part, veterans who were kicked out for their sexual orientation were given honorable or general under honorable conditions discharges, though there were absolutely exceptions to that. And certainly the farther you go back in history, the more likely that they would have gotten a less than honorable or other than honorable discharge. And as I mentioned, you know, a lot of the sodomy and homosexuality were criminalized in the service, and so they could have been court-martialed for those infractions and gotten a punitive discharge, like a bad conduct or dishonorable discharge as well. But for the most part, most folks, even though they were kicked out, got an honorable or a general discharge. All right, next slide. All right, so Oh, the other thing I wanted to touch on is that at the bottom of the DD-214, or sometimes it was at the top, depending on what version of the form you received at separation, it would also say as your narrative reason for discharge, either homosexual admission, conduct, homosexual activity, bisexual admission, and the like. And lastly, the reenlistment code, the reentry code, would have said RE4 as opposed to RE1. And what that indicates to the veteran, but also to employers, if they're, handing this form over to somebody who knows what they're looking at when they're looking at a DD-214, is that this is indicating that this person's not eligible for reenlistment. Not with a waiver, not just like flat out not eligible, which of course is going to be a barrier potentially in an employment context. Okay, next slide. All right, and as we've learned today, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was then repealed. It went into effect in September of 2011. And of course, this, to be clear, did not end the harassment and mistreatment of LGB folks serving in the military, though of course it was a step in the right direction. All right, next slide. Okay, so after the repeal, Under Secretary of Defense Clifford Stanley issued a memorandum the day that it went into effect, basically giving information, giving guidance to the boards for the board for military records corrections at the various branches on how to make these corrections for vets who discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and previous policies. And that memo is the key source of law in figuring out how to navigate this records correction process for these kinds of corrections. Next slide. All right, and so what it says is if you have an honorable or a general under honorable or an other than honorable discharge, what you're trying to do is correct that so it says honorable. What the Stanley memo says is that if you got a general, they're going to assume there's no other misconduct in your record and they're going to get you up to honorable. If you had an other than honorable, though, they'll do a full review of your record to make sure there's not other misconduct unrelated to your sexual orientation that was grounds for discharge. But in this process, what you're asking the corrections boards to do is to change your discharge status up to honorable. And then the other authority that they have is to correct the narrative reason from those listed there to secretarial authority. And so that's sort of the default language. Whenever the board makes a correction to a military record, that's what they'll typically change it to. And then lastly, the board, again, if you're successful in this process, will lastly change your RE code to RE1 or RE1J if you served in the Air Force. So basically removing all the things on the record that would indicate that you were kicked out for your sexual orientation. You can think of it as an equivalent of like a record expungement or a record clearing, but for the military. All right, next slide, please. So there are two entities that have jurisdiction to make these sorts of corrections to a veteran's DD-214. The first is the Discharge Review Board. They have jurisdiction over vets who were discharged less than 15 years ago. But if you were discharged more than 15 years ago, the entity you would apply to is the Board for Correction of Military Records. So each branch has their own DRB and their own BCMR or BCNR, with the exception of the Marines and the Navy sharing a joint board in both cases. So if you served in the Army and you got out 10 years ago, you would apply to the Army's Discharge Review Board, for example. Okay, next slide, please. All right, and so what do these applications for records corrections look like? So there's sort of two necessary pieces of paper you have to include. One is the application that the board uses. So for the DRB, it's the DD-293 form. And if it's to the BCMR or BCNR, you're going to be using the DD form 149. Both are available online. And they recently updated the forms within the last year. So make sure you're looking at the form that has the OCR boxes on it. And the date at the bottom of the form is going to be, I think, 2019. So that's the most recent version of the form to use. And then they also require that in addition to the application itself, the veteran provide a copy of their DD-214. And lastly, we always encourage folks to include a personal statement about what their experience was in the service and why should the board make these corrections. And it can be very simple, but give them some context, some information about who you are, what happened to you, how the discharge came to be, and why you want it corrected today. And essentially sending in that packet of information to the entity you're applying to. All right, next slide. And then, yes, so we recommend that you make a copy of the entire application before you send it for your records in case it gets lost in the mail. Send it via certified mail with a tracking number so you make sure that the board receives it. If you don't, you're typically going to receive acknowledgement that they've received your application within a few months. With COVID, that might be delayed. But if a few months has gone by and you haven't heard anything and the tracking number shows it showed up, I would encourage you to just contact them to make sure that they're, that they've docketed your application. And obviously this is very tiny font here on the screen, but these are the addresses that you would be sending. But please note that on the DD-293 and the DD-149, it has on there what address based on what branch you served, where to send it. So you can just look on the form to know where to send it off to. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then just because I have you all as an audience, there's this part of VA benefits law that not a lot of people know about, and so I just want to take this opportunity to spend a few minutes talking about the character of discharge determination process. So as I mentioned up top, most vets kicked out for their sexual orientation did receive an honorable or a general under honorable conditions discharge. If they got one of those discharges, that discharge is not going to preclude them from getting benefits at the VA, right? They're okay in terms of their veteran status. So long as they meet the other criteria, their discharge status is not going to be a barrier for them. That's not the case if you have an other than honorable bad conduct or discharge, a dishonorable discharge. But note that even if you have one of those less than honorable discharges, you may still be eligible for VA benefits. So I'm just going to quickly talk about that for the folks who perhaps were kicked out due to their sexual orientation and did get a less than honorable discharge, to give them an alternative that might help them get some health care and monetary benefits at the VA. So next slide. Oh, next slide, please. Great. Okay, so you'll see here that if you got an honorable, general under honorable, or most uncharacterized discharges, you're going to be deemed honorable for VA purposes. If you have a dishonorable discharge as a result of a general court-martial, that's necessarily how you get that discharge. You are statutorily barred from VA benefits unless you were found to be insane at the time of the misconduct. So you had very severe mental health issues at the time of the misconduct. But for folks who got an other than honorable, or what used to be called an undesirable discharge, or a bad conduct discharge as a result of a special court-martial conviction, the VA has complete discretion about whether or not to let you in the door and get you, service connection and health care and home loan and all of that. So the process by which they decide this is called the VA's character of discharge determination process. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have a self-help guide at Swords to Plowshares. We have a number of self-help guides on our website. So I encourage you, if you want more information about this process, to go there. And if you're a veteran who lives in San Francisco and are, have an OTH or a BCD discharge and you want assistance getting VA eligibility, please, know that this is the work that we do and we serve San Francisco veterans, and we'd be more than happy to meet with you. But I just wanted to put that out there as an alternative. You can get a discharge upgrade, of course, and that's the only process that they're actually going to correct your record. But if you have a less than honorable discharge because you were kicked out because of your sexual orientation, and your main motivation or priority motivation is to get benefits of the VA and healthcare and the like, just know that there's this other process that you might be successful at getting those benefits through. All right, and I think, let me see, is that the next slide? Oh, okay, and then yes, I just wanted to also mention a few resources. So like I said, Swords helps with these character of discharge processes. We of course also help with the discharge upgrades for LGBTQ vets. There's also county veteran service offices and other VSOs that can help navigate this process. And then Modern Military Association that you just heard Jennifer speak from, they also assist, as she mentioned, doing the records corrections work for folks who got kicked out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell and previous policies as well. All right, next slide. All right, so that's it for me.
Wonderful, thank you, Mo. Appreciate that presentation. And as promised to our viewers, I did see a question for you here. If I can scroll just right back to it. Here we go. Mo, can I upgrade my DD-214-DD-215 after 43 years? And that is from Kurt Valencia.
Yes, so the application, you'd use DD form 149, and you'd be sending that application to the Board for Correction of Military or Naval Records, depending if you served in the Navy or the Marines. There is no deadline to submit that application. There is, well, I'll say this, that's not totally right. There's a 3-year deadline at the BCMR, but they waive it very often in the interest of justice. And all you need to do is include in your application that, yes, it's been more than 3 years since I separated from the service, but I just recently learned that I can get my military record corrected. And, you know, this has been, you know, I've been carrying this form around for decades. It's a total injustice what happened to me. And, you know, justice requires that the boards correct it today so that I can finally, you know, have a DD-214 that reflects accurately the service I provided. Something like that. You just need to sort of address it, and the boards very happily will waive that. But we often help folks who served, you know, the Korean War era and the like, who have gotten these records corrected. So no, it is not a barrier, and you're still eligible for that.
All right. Fantastic. I think that those are the only questions for swords right now. I'll read this last one here just to make sure, from initials MA. The e-benefits site does not work. I think I was finally able to submit a request for COE through e-benefits site, but it has been a few weeks now and I have not heard from VA. No email or mail or phone calls. Okay. And so for this one, we can go ahead and provide assistance to this person. I'm sorry, I only have initials, but we can go ahead and connect with you following this presentation if you'd like to reach out to us, and we can help you out. Okay. Thank you, Mo. Thank you so much. We previously had folks a presentation on LGBTQ discharge upgrades earlier this year, which is also provided on our Minority and Underrepresented Veterans Division website through the agency. And so Mo did participate as well in that presentation, and there's also a lot more information on there, and of course on this presentation. And we will be making this available following this event. Okay, so wonderful. Thanks again, Mo, and we'll bring back to you any questions following the event upon conclusion if we get any for you. Thank you. All right, folks, awesome. Joining us now from the California National Guard is Major General Matthew Beavers. Major General Matthew Beavers was appointed as an Assistant Adjutant General for the Army California National Guard by Governor Brown on April 16th, 2011. He provides current and future operational oversight to the Adjutant General for the Army and Air National Guard matters in the state of California. General Beavers was commissioned through early commissioning program at New Mexico Military Institute. During his command, he participated in Operation Garden Plot, the response to the Rodney King verdict civil unrest in Los Angeles. After completion of the Armor Officer Advanced Course, General Beavers served as the Assistant Brigade S3 with 3rd Brigade, 40th Infantry Division, mechanized. He then served as Operations Officer with the 69th Press Camp Headquarters, deploying with the 69th Press Camp Headquarters to Bosnia Herzegovina in support of Operation Joint Force. General Beavers continued to serve in the 69th Press Camp Headquarters as Executive Officer and later as Commander, deploying to Hungary with Task Force Warrior to train and equip Free Iraqi forces in the run-up to Operation Iraqi Freedom. Upon his return, he was assigned as Executive Officer, 100th Troop Command, and later deployed as the Director of Strategic Communications, Combined Forces Command, for Afghanistan Operation Enduring Freedom. General Beavers returned to 100th Troop Command as Executive Officer and later served as Assistant Chief of Staff to the California Army National Guard. Upon completion of Senior Service College, he was assigned as Director, Command Control Communications and Computer Systems, J6, and later as Director of Operations, J3, Joint Force Headquarters here in California. General Beavers went on to command the 100th Troop Command, Army National Guard here in California. Welcome, Major General Beavers. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, great. It's great to be with you. Can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. Great. That's like the world's hardest bio to get through. We got to rewrite that. I'll fix it for next time. But anyway, hey, good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with everybody today. I first want to thank Secretary Imbasciani for his exceptional leadership and commitment and dedication to each and every veteran who calls California home, and to Assemblymember Irwin for her time this morning, who's been a huge leader on a wide range of absolutely critical issues facing our state. And to all our speakers today, you got a marvelous panel. So I've got about 10 minutes, and then love to take some questions. I think I'm anchoring this event, so I'll go quick, and then we'll go from there. So really, it's been a long way since September 2011, when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was tossed into the trash heap of history. I think that day, the 20th of September, is, in my opinion, the singular defining moment, the tipping point, if you will, when there was no going back. Only forward progress could be made on LGBTQ+ equality in the armed forces. As you know, and it's been mentioned here a couple of times, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was really the best thing that President Clinton could do in the face of what I would characterize as extraordinarily strong resistance by military leaders and, frankly, by members of his own party in the Congress. And sadly, on the surface, some viewed that as a step in the right direction. But as we knew then, and as others later came to realize, the effects of Don't Ask, Don't Tell had a huge deleterious effect on everybody. It essentially forced people by mandate of law, and I think Secretary Imbasciani mentioned this earlier, it essentially forced people by mandate of law to lie. As long as you lied, you were okay. Telling the truth got you kicked out of the military. Lying kept you in. How upside down is that? In an institution where personal courage is revered, where absolute honesty demanded, a law was passed that went against the very grain of military culture. Looking back on that now, it seems absolutely insane. And the detrimental policies that brought on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, only 9 years behind us now, institutional bias still abounds, and it will not disappear anytime soon, in my opinion. I think we have at least a generation to go before this is righted. And I'll give you a couple of anecdotes or examples kind of illustrate my point. So I think it was like 2012, the Cal Guard had just finished participating in LA Pride. I got a call from some cubicle dwelling drone in Army Public Affairs in DC. The guy said, hey, you violated Army policy because you used a military vehicle at a political event. At a political event. I asked him to explain to me how being gay was political. I didn't ask for a response. I asked him again, is being tall also political? After a few seconds of total deafening silence, he said, yeah, we'll get back to you. And not surprising, nobody ever got back to us. And we continue to use military vehicles and pride parades and other events across the spectrum. We actually dealt with a similar challenge last year, if you can believe it or not. This time was with the Air Force. We had a opportunity to open up San Diego Pride with a 4-ship F-15 flyover. Going to start the entire thing off. It was going to be awesome. The Air Force's initial response was it didn't meet their policy requirements because of the boutique nature of the parade. I guess boutique is now some kind of code word for political. They didn't actually say that, but we didn't go there with them. Instead, they said that it didn't meet the specific standard for which they said you could do a flyover. So it had to be more like a Dodger game, 40 or 50,000 people. And, the population had to be representative and propense to join the Air Force. So I said, well, then we should be okay. Because at the end of the day, I don't know, like 200,000 people participate in San Diego Pride. And San Diego happens to be the largest military town west of the Mississippi. Again, death being silenced, nobody got back to us. But I got to give the Air Force credit. They actually let us do the flyover, and it was awesome. I mean, it was there. I mean, everybody was crying. Tears were in my eyes. It was super cool. I think we flew it a little lower than 1,000 feet, but don't tell anybody. Anyway, so why is the notion of inclusion so important to the military, and why is the general making such a big deal about it? And it's a fair question. I get it all the time, frankly. And the answer is really, really quite simple. It's all about readiness, absolutely about readiness. In order to be ready, it's imperative that we represent the citizens that we serve. Denying folks the opportunity who are willing and able to serve makes us much less representative of the population, not only in California, but across the United States, and therefore makes us much, much less effective. So I guess how do we continue to make good on the courage and sacrifice of those who live through Don't Ask, Don't Tell? And I think it's ultimately contained in the Army warrior ethos. There's a couple of very simple lines in that ethos, and it says two things: I will never accept defeat, and I will never quit. And in my mind, those are two pretty decent examples to fall back on. And this is especially true for trans people who want to join the military. If you recall, I mentioned that back on September 2011 was the defining point, a moment where we were never going to go back. Unfortunately, the memorandum signed by President Trump back in March of 2018 is one glaring exception to my statement. The current policy towards transgendered service members, in my mind, essentially equates to Don't Ask, Don't Tell for trans people. And you'd think that after the repealment of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the extensive body of scholarly work done to show the deleterious effects it had on the LGBTQ service members, you think there'd be no way that we could ever go back to that. And unfortunately, we did. And that should be a reminder to all of us. It should absolutely be a reminder to all of us that we have much more work to do, and the fight for trans people must go on. But I want to make it clear, and we talked about this before, that the California National Guard has absolutely no intention of kicking out any transgender service members. We're in fact trying to seek ways to get around the policies implemented by the president to bring folks in. It's been a huge challenge. We run into a ton of roadblocks, but we're continuing to press. But my point really about trans rights in the military illustrates my other point about institutional bias, and it exists. And it exists at the highest level of the federal government, and it's going to be with us for a long time. So I guess I kind of leave you with this. So we have to aggressively defend every win we get in this space, because there are folks out there who want to take it away. They absolutely want to take it away, and we can't let them win. We cannot let them win. So with that, appreciate the opportunity. Perfect panel. You guys knocked it out of the park. And Social, I got to talk to you about joining the National Guard. You can't be in the Army Reserve. I know your boss. He's listening in. I have to go see him. You and Spangler, same deal. It's like, come on, you're killing us here. All right, that's all I got. Thanks. Looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Happy to have a conversation. Maybe I'll tag team with John. Well said, sir. Don't Ask, Don't Tell, you have been outdated. We're looking back at 2010 when the policy was rightfully repealed, and now in 2010 we still stand to defend. And we're going to come back next year to continue to celebrate this upon the official implementation, and to continue pushing back on erroneous policies going against our LGBTQ and transgender service members and veterans. Like you said, we want to be able to focus on our mission and serve our country honorably and diligently, and we need to continue to push for progressive, not regressive policies. So thank you very much, sir. At this time, I'm going to go around and Dr. Imbasciani, we are about to wrap up and do thank yous just before we go on to our open Q&A session. So we'll do our wrap up and thank yous, and then I'll go ahead and then go through the line of questions that we've received today. So Dr. Imbasciani, I'll go ahead and if you'd like, sir, to give just some closing remarks to our folks here today, or encouraging words to our community who's viewing.
Well, thanks. I'll keep this really, really short because I'm sure people's questions. This has been an extraordinary gathering of talent and stirring words. You know, from Jacqui, who helped sponsor legislation. Zoe's personal story is just extraordinary. General Beavers speaks from the heart, and he speaks for the senior leadership of the entire Guard on how welcoming it is, and Rick Zabor's extraordinary efforts in the public sphere and through the courts to make rights wrong, and our wonderful allies in San Francisco, the Swords to Plowshares people who have helped so many people. And I can tell there are more people because I'm reading the chat line, that there are some people on this webinar this morning who have bad paper, which is what we call those discharge papers that kicked you out of the military still after decades. There is a way to correct that, folks. And so I hope I'm not leaving anyone out. Am I, Social? I want to thank everybody who's participated in this. We've made a recording of it. I think it's going to be a resource for a good number of months and possibly years to come for LGBTQ veterans out there who are looking to address the grievances that have been done them, to get themselves back on the path. I'm even texting right now to one of our correspondents who might be hitting me up from a mortgage from Calvet. So if we can connect you to any of the benefits that you have earned, these are not gifts, you've earned them. In spite of what your discharge papers say, we can still help you connect either through our offices or through the county veteran service officers in all the counties of California. We've got one listener who's participating today from Florida. We have connections there. We know Florida is not a great state, sometimes to supporting well, let me say one more thing. I do sit on a national meeting of the directors of Veterans Affairs for the 50 states and 6 territories. And last year we managed, after 3 years, to push through a resolution. Many of the representatives from what we call red states had to stand up and state their abstention, but we did manage to get a majority of states, 40 of them, to pressure through a resolution the United States Department of Veterans Affairs to begin thinking of expanding their Division of Minority Affairs, which have always for 30 years now had outreach to ethnic minority communities, to get them to start, even in this present administration, reaching out to the LGBT community. They're not going to do it easily. This year, California is leading in that same group of national directors a resolution to get the Department of Defense to allow transgendered individuals to serve. California is seen by all the other 49 states to be in the lead on this, and I'm very, very proud of that. And I do that because I have all of your support. So thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So folks, as you see, the advocacy continues. Thank you all. I'll go ahead and read our participants today. So folks that are out there and listening, you'll be able to watch this presentation here following this event online, and we will be sending out an email to everyone who registered with the details for that information. Jennifer Dane, thank you so much, from the Modern Military Association. Assemblymember Jacqui Irwin, Ms. Zoe Dunning, looking forward to connecting with you, hopefully once COVID subsides. Rick Chavez-Burr, thank you, sir, for joining us. Mo Cedar from Swords to Plowshares, folks. And of course, Major General Matthew Beavers. Dr. Imbasciani, I appreciate your closing comments there. If any panelists want to give out some last minute remarks here before we jump into the Q&A, otherwise we'd love to have you in the Q&A session. What I'm going to go ahead and do is read some of these questions, but are we set to go, I think? All right. Let me just. Awesome. I'm going to scroll to the top, and Get you back here. There we go. And folks, for those of you who are participating and sent your questions, we appreciate it, and we hope to get to all of them. If there's some we can't answer, if we need to give one-on-one advice or service, we will also do that as well. All right, we have Dan Presser joining us. Says the military is still discriminating. How can we get 100% inclusivity? And I'll go ahead and start that off. You know, as we heard earlier, there's no federal law prohibiting discrimination against the LGBTQ community. So I would tell you, on the individual level, you want to continue advocating at the local level with your local representatives, with your state representatives, and join other veteran service organizations that advocate for the LGBTQ community. You know, whether it be veterans or the general public, because we need to continue to push to ensure that we get legislation and policies in place at all levels of government. So that's my suggestion on that one, Dan. If you're still on and you'd like to elaborate, we'd be happy to have you give some comments. I don't know if there you are, Dan. And I think we can't hear. There we go. We can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I'm worried. First of all, I'm straight, and I've been fighting for gay and lesbian rights, LGBT rights for almost all my life. But I'm concerned about transgender people now and what the Trump administration is doing. It's really sad. Rick talked about, you know, we can't go backwards, but it seems like we are. So what can we do to make sure that everything is going forward?
That's right. We continue to push back, and echoing the sentiments of some of our speakers today, engage this upcoming November election.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you got to vote. And yeah, from my standpoint, it's super important that everybody gets out and exercises their right to do that. That is the only way, in my mind, that this will change. And I mentioned in my remarks that the institutional bias is out there throughout the Department of Defense, and we will get we will get our day. That hopefully the memorandum Trump did back in 2018 will be unwound. But we have to remember too that that's just a start. That institutional bias is prevalent in my mind throughout the Department of Defense, and it's going to take leadership at all levels, and it's going to take some time. We continue to fight this battle every day. And I'll give you an example. We were trying to assess a Navy lieutenant commander who had gone through transition. She had stepped out of the Navy to do it, and then tried to get back in, obviously, to join the California National Guard as a helicopter pilot. So we're talking a high-hour, hugely experienced helicopter pilot that we cannot assess into the Cal Guard because she's trans. And I don't know if you guys have seen the news lately, but I'm flying like 15 helicopters a day trying to put out these fires. Yet I'm denied having experienced pilots simply because of their gender identity. It's nuts. So we've got to work on it. But I think voting's the first step.
But you know, too, that the Supreme Court's going to be loaded with real big conservatives. So we can vote all we want, but we're still going to have a problem in the Supreme Court.
That's right. Thank you, Dan. There we go. We have some comments. All right, go ahead, Leonard. I hear someone.
I think Rick wants to talk.
Go for it, Rick.
Were you? Yeah, I was just gonna.
The Supreme Court, Rick.
Yeah. So,
with new appointees.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Supreme Court, you know, unfortunately, you know, if the Senate does what they intend to do and they ram through a justice, you know, and obviously after having deprived President Obama of his appointee, you know, one of the things, you know, first of all, I don't think the fight is over, right? I think those of you who have who are living in other states, who, fortunately, I think our two senators are going to be on the right side of this in California, but, folks in other states, particularly, folks that are, that moderate Republicans, you should get everyone to be calling into those offices. I think we're starting to see a similar effort to what happened around the repeal of the Affordable Care Act with this, but we don't have a lot of time. And so, really sort of having anyone that's in another state call their own senator and voice objection to ramming this through. If that doesn't happen, obviously the election is really crucial. And I think a lot of the discussion is that if they actually ram this thing through, that there will be justification for the Democrats to push for an expansion of the court. And so I think that is, but obviously to do that, we need to win the presidency and we need to win both houses of Congress by good enough margins. So that's why it's so important. It's so important to vote in this election.
Okay, folks, we're going to go on. Thank you for your question, Dan. And let's continue to engage in that conversation and as far as ideas as well on how to promote out there, and now through the virtual world, of course, because that's where COVID has us. All right, I have Elizabeth Lynn. Do you have any statistics on Pacific Islander veterans? Let me see if I see Elizabeth. Elizabeth, we do have some statistics. Wanted to zero in a bit on your specific question, but we will go ahead and touch bases with you by email because I don't see you on here. Thank you. All right, Mike Brewer here, VSO with California Marine Corps League. Thank you, Mike. And I think you had a question towards the end. I think I saw your name again. Very good. Let's see here. All right. Awesome. Okay, Mike, and I see you commented, as the VSO, those discharges have no sustainable legal grounding. All right, Kurt. Okay, folks, I'm scrolling down to the questions here. All right, we have someone listening in from Jacksonville.
That wasn't my question.
That wasn't your question, Mike?
No, the question is for the general. Beavers? Am I here?
For it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, General. You guys are also articulate. I'm impressed. I'm a VSO with the Marine Corps League. I'm also a retreat team leader that I've been doing for 21 years. Arizona, now Elder Warrior .com out of Monterey County. I live in the mountains by Lake Arrowhead that we take veterans from all over the state. So the question is simple and a bit dark. How much does this issue contribute to the rise and seeming plateau of the suicide rate?
That's a really good question. I don't have the data that would articulate a trend between the travesties of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the challenges with trans rights in the military and suicide. What I can tell you about suicide, especially in the Guard, and across, I think, the entire Army enterprise writ large, is folks that are killing themselves right now. They tend to be extraordinarily young. They generally single. They're generally white, and they generally either have some kind of financial issue or a relationship issue. So those are really the key drivers that we see relative to suicides in our ranks. We've had a couple already this year. That's too many. But I couldn't really speak to this with any specificity on the connection between LGBTQ and the stigma. and suicide. But I will tell you this, that in the California National Guard, we work extraordinarily hard to destigmatize any of that. The work that we do every day, I think, speaks to that. And I think we've done a fairly decent job of doing that and moving the ball forward as best we can. So that's my answer.
Well, I use the word plateau because I'm, as one trained in suicide prevention, which remains a mystery, you almost have to be there in the day of the hour where someone is wanting to harm themselves. But the other mystery is that 56% have never been deployed, which returns to relationship issues. I'm aware of a young man that committed suicide because of the way his friend who was gay was treated. So
Yeah.
it's pretty pervasive, and I really don't, as you said, I don't know how you can reach out and touch it, but it is a real bugaboo for all the armed forces right now.
So what we've done in California to try to mitigate that is we have a pretty extraordinary team of behavioral health specialists that we've deployed statewide, and we try to intervene on behalf of those soldiers and airmen, because we have the Air Force as well, intervene to ensure that we can try to catch folks before they make the ultimate decision to end their lives. And I know we've had, and it's hard to equate between how many folks that we've intervened with and how many would actually commit suicide, but I would tell you that any given year, it's probably in the low 1,500s, 2,000 to 1,500, what I would call successful interventions that we've stopped folks from taking the next step, whatever that might be, to ending their lives. And frankly, the model that we established in California several years ago is now being deployed nationwide. They call it the California model. But it is a huge challenge, more for the Guard, I would offer, than our active component counterparts, since we only touch these soldiers 45 or 50 days a year. It makes it more challenging in the reserve component. But yeah, you have to have very elegant interventions, and folks need to understand that those interventions exist, and then you have to deploy them elegantly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, sir. Okay. All right. Maricela, my partner for 30 years hasn't had any deserving benefits. Maricela, if you're out there, you're more than welcome to send us an email and we can do initial intake to get you a legal service provider. Please do reach out to us. I don't see you on the screen here, but please do reach out to us. Kurt Valencia, thank you for everything you said. It makes me feel normal. Kurt, you've always been normal. No one has the right to tell us how we should live our lives. Thank you for joining us. Okay. Oh, let's do this. I'm going to read this from Crystal Collar, I think it is. Kaler. I enlisted in the Navy in 1987, became an officer after graduating the Boost program and college in 1992, then retired in 2016. I stayed closeted out of fear until I just before retired, but I married my lover of 20 years before retirement, so we have full benefits. Thanks for this eye-opening opportunity, and to all my family members out there. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Okay. Let me see, and I'll share. And anyone who'd like to share the story as I'm scrolling here, I'm trying to get to the questions, but I am trying to also capture some stories as well. Let me see here. Okay, question. How can I transfer my 9/11 GI Bill to my wife? She has been with me before the Navy, but couldn't transfer it because the marriage was not legal until 5 years later. Okay, and that's Maricela again. Maricela, I don't see you, but would love to connect with you. Oh, there you are.
Social.
Yes.
This is Dr. Imbasciani. That's probably a complicated discussion, but if she would contact Deputy Secretary Keith Boylan or go to Calvet's website, it's easy to find, and look for the Veteran Services Division. We will, that should get you in contact with that, and we can explain the process of what the GI Bill and post 9/11 GI Bill and all the other GI Bills. I don't know what your period of service is. It doesn't matter though, how you can navigate those, learn what your benefits are and which ones are transferable to your sort of legal relatives and family members. Okay?
Yes, thank you, sir. And I saw you, Maricela. Thank you. Very good.
Social, you might, for the benefit of many, advertise or put in the comment section in the chat how to get to our website.
All right, very good. All right, I'm gonna have my team over there. Guys, Ricky and Jose, if you can add the Veteran Services link, website, and contact information on the chat, please, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
And maybe the National Guard wants to put its recruiting number on the line also.
There we go.
All right. Well said, Mr. Secretary, well said.
Okay. MA, I have been trying to get a certificate of eligibility from the VA to buy a home with the VA-backed loan. I am in California, and I'm having difficulty getting this from the VA or getting a hold of representative of VA on the phone or getting in contact with VA. Okay, awesome. MA, once we're going to provide the information here to our Veteran Services Division unit to get you the help you need.
Social, this is Dr. Imbasciani again. While we were speaking, I've handed off all of her contact information to our Farm and Home Loan Division. Someone just came down to my office, picked up her contact email and telephone numbers. They're going to be in contact with you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for that, sir.
Okay.
Okay, and yes, questions on the copies of the presentations and sharing this webinar, yes. So we will provide this. Everyone who registered and obtained this link will get an email with instructions on how to go back and view today's webinar. Let's see here. Is there any advantages or disadvantages to get? Okay, that's the Calvet loan one. We got you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah. All right, folks. It's great to see service members and veterans on here. Thank you for commenting. Okay. Good. Okay. Let's see here. Questions? Okay, and then Mike, you already asked your question to the general. Okay. All right. Mr. Brad Peterson, you have a question? Let's see here. Okay, let me scroll.
I was just putting my contact information for Calvet Home Loans on. I just put it on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, let me see. I'm nearing the end here. So if there's any questions I didn't catch, please stop me before the closing here. We have our women veteran link as well on here. And then, okay. Our minority veterans email and phone number. We have a full team here at every division to answer your questions. Okay. And the team has emailed everyone the local interagency network coordinator, aka our link for contact information. There we go. Okay, folks, it doesn't look like we have any more questions unless there's any hands raised or anyone wants to speak before we close up. I will share a brief story when I joined the military and I was in basic training, and y'all remember our assigned battle buddies, and it was always by alphabetical order. My battle buddy, she was gay, she's a lesbian, is still, and I remember being assigned my battle buddy and thinking, and just seeing some of the treatment that she received, and the additional duty, which you have all of those extra duty items that are handed off, when you're late to formation, when you're not meeting the expectations of the drill sergeants. And I remember just feeling like, you know what, I'm here with my battle buddy. I don't know what's going on at that time. I didn't know much about the don't ask, don't tell policy. I just heard the rumors about it, and it never, came across my mind as to, my thought was, I don't know why we focus on discriminating, but at the end of the day, I always felt comfortable with my battle buddy, and so it's close to my heart, the subject of LGBTQ veterans and empowering our communities above and beyond, in and outside the military. And we talk a lot about, how do we do away with suicide, right, with the stigmas, and now faced with COVID and being forced to be at home a lot of the time, we just need to work to continue to connect with our communities, to continue to educate, to pass along information, and to empower folks that are pushing forward the purpose and making sure that we're able to break ground and fight for what's right for our LGBTQ community and our veterans. So with that, folks, we have come to the end of this program. Thank you so very much for joining us. Sir, Dr. Vito Imbasciani, thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to have spoken to all of you, to connect with you. We're going to email this information, as I mentioned. Feel free to send your remarks and questions. Our team usually follows up with the survey as well. Please do participate in the survey, and we'll keep you in the loop with future programs here through the California Department of Veterans Affairs. Once again, I'm Xochitl Rodriguez Murillo, Deputy Secretary for Minority and Underrepresented Veterans, and it was a pleasure to host you. Thank you so much, and thank you to my team out there who's been manning the whole event. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.